usually when you realize that you are pregnant, therefore that's when the majority of abortion happens. As much as the conservative, at least within the US, would tend to argue, oh, these Democrats, they're trying to argue that you can abort a baby even if you're 9 months in or something like that, when it's really unlikely unless if it is very life-threatening for the person who carries the fetus. It's absurd. And now we're faced against conditions where if such a condition does happen, where, I mean, in all likelihood, both of them would die, both the fetus and the carrier, and then suddenly the doctor cannot abort the fetus because it's illegal. Then what the fuck? Both of them would die. So it's really messed up.
Okay, so why do you not support a woman's right to defend herself against a fetus? Hey, hold on. Wait. Against a person? Against a parasite of a person. A person who is attacking her body.
No, the language becomes very loaded, which is not optically, effective, especially if you're trying, as he said, trying to meet them halfway, meet the conservative halfway. Because then, through their perspective, we're talking about a fetus. I mean, to their minds, a person, a baby, which obviously has more moral weight. So yeah, calling them a parasite, which I almost said that, honestly, which of course it's very dehumanizing to their perspective, then yeah, you would be considered as an asshole, essentially.
But it wouldn't be a hard question if we were talking about a fetus. Would it? Well, no shit. But you said your argument would work if fetuses were people. Now, why are you treating a fetus different from a 3-year-old? It's like you don't really think the fetus is a person. I'm sorry, brother.
Because we don't. Whenever we grant you that, okay, fine, let's consider the fetus a person, and go through the whole violinist argument, is try to appeal to you. But deep down, no, we don't. It's like we're trying to meet you where you're at. If you're considering that a fetus is a person, that means let's create a hypothetical where it is also an adult. If anything, this shows that, hey, why is it if it's an adult, then it's okay if you sever the attachment to that adult person, but it's not okay if it is with a fetus. So when someone brings up during the first trimester, the fetus will already have a heartbeat, then you can link it to a brain dead person, which is not exactly elegant, but at least it's better than saying, oh, the fetus is just a cluster of cell. That's what it comes down to, right? If it is a brain dead person and you can still support it through life support, ventilators and whatnot, but would that person be alive? They're not. So in the case of a fetus, then if it's only a heartbeat, then logically, if you want to be consistent, they're not alive.
If you really are pro-life, the only reason you would allow abortion in this case, but not for, say, a consenting adult, is because saying no to the 10-year-old makes you feel queasy.
National Right to Life official. The 10-year-old Ohio girl who crossed state lines to receive an God, no. Holy. Crossed the state lines to receive an abortion in Indiana should have carried her pregnancy to term and would be required to do so under a model law written for state legislators. That his law only provides exceptions if the person's life is in danger. As a 10-year-old, she would have had the baby, and as many women who have had babies as a result of the R word, we would hope that she would understand the reason and ultimately the benefit of having the child. Fucking hell, mate. Hello there. Welcome to the Pit of Tensions. We're going to do something a bit different here. We're going to react to a video. For my first experiment, it's going to be a video from LonerBox. He recently uploaded this video about abortion and the debates surrounding it. The reason that I'm doing this is because I realized that making a script for a video, it takes a really long time. Like, the last political video, quote unquote, was like on May. So that's 4 months ago, if not more. So I figured, why don't I leverage my live streams? Before we get to the video, Allow me to establish first that I am pro-choice, although I would say that my arguments tend to be very surface level, like, oh, the person who carries the fetus should have the right to decide what to do with it. I see a fetus as a nothing but a clump of cells, and like I don't acknowledge a fetus as a fully fledged human. Therefore, the right to life simply does not apply to them. That's pretty much the full extent of my argument. I understand that there's this whole thing about bodily autonomy. This is usually when people would go for this hypothetical about the famous violinist. I've watched a video from Philosophy Tube that covered this, and LonerBox will also mention this in the video. But I don't know, something about it just didn't work for me. It's just too convoluted. Anywho, I won't take more of your time. Let's get straight into the video. Okay, let's go. Shit.
Hey, so abortion. That's a thing. People are talking about this.
Indeed.
In the US, Roe v. Wade, whoever that is, was recently overturned, and more than 10 states have either banned or imposed restrictions on the abortion procedure. Was this good or was it bad? People are asking this. I'm going to ask this. Now, in this video.
Okay, so I think he released this video not long after Roe v. Wade was repealed by the Supreme Court. Essentially, through that court decision, well, not the Supreme Court decision. No, wait. Oh, yeah, it is the Supreme Court decision in regards to Roe v. Wade. Essentially, it guarantees federal right to abortion. However, considering that now the US Supreme Court is packed with conservative judges, they tend to refer to them as activist judges. I'm not sure what that means exactly. Maybe because it implies that they are not impartial. Although it's kind of like irrelevant, I guess, because like, of course they have their own biases. I don't understand why. How can you expect the Supreme Court to not be biased one way or another? Anywho, because of that, now it is up to the state to decide whether or not they would allow abortion within their state. It is up to them to regulate it. So yeah, obviously, as the video imply, states have started to, the red states have started to ban abortion, develop new regulation. It's very convenient that it didn't take long after Roe v. Wade was repealed, and then suddenly, voila, within a matter of days, if not weeks, within a matter of weeks, if not days, states started to regulate this issue.
So, just a quick disclaimer. I am 100% pro-choice. I think the overturning of Roe v. Wade was bad, but I do think the abortion debate is a lot more complicated than some people give it credit for, and I am going to talk about some places where I think my side's arguments can fall short. So, part 1. Choice versus life. So, from my experience, there are 3 main places the abortion debate can go. There's pro-life versus pro-choice, which weighs the bodily autonomy of a mother against the fetus's right to live. Mm-hmm. There's the argument about whether or not a fetus has any right to life at all. In other words, where does life begin? And there's the discussion of what the world would look like if a pro-life or pro-choice position is put into practice.
Now, that's interesting. I've never really seen people talk about number 3. Or I guess they do. Yeah, I guess this is where they would start talking about sexual assault victims, SA victims, R victims, where then they would, if we ban abortion, it would mean that they would be forced to carry essentially the fetus of their assailant. And that's fucked up in a lot of ways. And it's unfortunate that within the Indonesian context, and I guess I imagine in just generally conservative states, they would even force the victim to get married with the offender, the sex offender. And that's a whole nother level of fucked upness. And I really don't understand how they could seriously consider that as a solution, disregarding the trauma that the victim has to go through, even from the moment itself. And now, essentially, the victim is now forced to spend the rest of their life with the assailant, with the offender. That's fucked. That's inhumane.
Starting with the first one, you can probably guess why this conflict is so never-ending. One side will say, my body, my choice, and the other will say that your right to choose ends where another body begins. Or something like this.
When women say, my body, my choice, I agree. Yes, we have the right to our bodies and our bodily autonomy. Women and their bodies must be respected and protected. Bodily rights are especially important when a woman is pregnant, because there is more than one body involved. After all, carrying a baby is a bit more complicated than, say, carrying a football.
And here you have the infamous clash of pro-choice versus pro-life, where the unstoppable force of bodily autonomy meets the immovable object of, well, what about the autonomy of the body living inside of you? It's easy to see why arguments like this can very quickly reach an impasse.
This is where then people will start talking about personhood. People will start talking about, is the fetus sentient yet? Should we grant them by personhood, as in should we acknowledge them as a human being? Therefore, should be granted the same human rights to not be murdered, essentially. And yeah, it's complicated. Like the thing is, the part that bothers me a lot is that I think this is something that I need to look into. Okay, sure. What about the right for the fetus to life, right? To acknowledge their personhood. Are they though? At what point do they become sentient? We can funnel them into that, right? And then we'll start talking about when do they start developing senses and whatnot. Their maybe not heartbeat. Yeah, there you go. Immediately you're stumped, because then they would say, oh, but then, because like most people would realize they are pregnant during the first trimester. And that's usually when the majority of the abortion would happen. I mean, it's quite logical, right? Usually when you realize that you are pregnant, therefore that's when the majority of abortion happens. As much as the conservative, at least within the US, would tend to argue, oh, these Democrats, they're trying to argue that you can abort a baby even if you're 9 months in or something like that. When it's really unlikely, unless if it is very life-threatening for the person who carries the fetus. It's absurd. And now we're faced against conditions where if such a condition does happen, where, I mean, in all likelihood, both of them would die, both the fetus and the carrier, and then suddenly the doctor cannot, abort the fetus because it's illegal. Then what the fuck? Both of them would die. So it's really messed up. But what I was trying to say is that you're immediately met with an impasse, because then you would get you have to argue all the nitty-gritty. Okay, if a fetus has developed their heartbeat, does that mean they're already sentient? Or should we wait until the first brain activity? And it's overly convoluted. I would advise against going there. Because again, just say it's a fetus. They should not be granted the right to live. I'm sorry. If the person who carries the fetus decides to not, facilitate the development of the fetus until they give birth, then it should be up to them.
If you're a pro-lifer, you will almost definitely believe that life begins at conception, meaning that someone using their bodily autonomy to have an abortion is the same as someone using their autonomy to kill a 3-year-old in the street. Now, if we can show that a fetus is not a person, the problem goes away. But the way you get there can be a bit tricky.
Yeah.
Some people, and by people I mean middle-class philosophy students, will try to be extra clever and argue that bodily autonomy trumps the pro-life position, even if you agree that a fetus is just as much a person as a fully grown adult. Personally, I think this approach is very unnecessary and ultimately flawed.
This is when I get to my 10-minute rant about bodily autonomy, about the famous violinist argument. It's too convoluted.
And I will now demonstrate this through the medium of two blokes arguing on the internet.
Here we go.
Okay. Whew. I think I can meet you halfway here. Let's just say I agree that life, personhood, begins at conception. I think the pro-choice argument still works. Let me just ask you some questions. Do you like freedom? I'm sorry. What? I don't like freedom, okay?
That's kind of a good American accent. I'll give him that.
I love freedom. Freedom can come over to my house and my sister. Okay, so... No. Let me stop you right there. Do you know who the you're talking to? Brother, my middle name is Freedom. My last name Freedom.
Okay, we can skip
Justice
this.
Grant Doctor.
Oh,
Baby's
wait,
freedom,
okay.
not to be killed in the... I support women's freedom just as much as I support a baby's freedom not to be killed in the womb by some Nazi Democrat doctor. Yield. Okay.
Okay.
So my next question is, it's just yes or no question. Do you support the right to self-defense? Of course I support the right to self-defense. My middle name is self-defense. Cool, so... The Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, the right to rise up against government tyranny. It might not be this year, it might not be in 1,000 years, but when the time comes, you'll bet your hickory sweet ass the American people will be armed and ready to give them hell.
I'm surprised he didn't go for a southern accent, although it's probably too much for him.
Kyle Rittenhouse, 2024.
Jesus.
Okay, so why do you not support a woman's right to defend herself against a fetus? Hey, hold on. Wait. Against a person? Against a parasite of a person. A person who is attacking her body.
No, the language becomes very loaded, which is not optically, effective, especially if you're trying, as he said, trying to meet them halfway, meet the conservative halfway. Because then, through their perspective, we're talking about a fetus. I mean, to their minds, a person, a baby, which obviously has more moral weight. So yeah, calling them a parasite, which I almost said that, honestly, which of course it's very dehumanizing to their perspective, then yeah, you would be considered as an asshole, essentially.
Sapping her nutrients, making her sick, permanently altering the shape of her body, causing her emotional torment, increasing her chance of death? Like, I'm sure you agree that self-defense doesn't have to be proportionate, right? If someone attacks you with a golf club and all you have is a gun, you should still have the right to use the gun because they're the aggressor, right? Well, yeah, but So, if you can use legal force against an adult aggressor, why not a fetus? Sorry, a very young person. But surely your bodily autonomy matters more than someone who is deciding to physically attack you.
But they're not exactly attacking you, right? Again, it's a false framing. I mean, it's not like I've ever heard anyone using these exact framing during actual debates. I guess LonerBox is trying to capture the most extreme version of how the debate would go.
Decided? No, not even decided. Look, this is why I keep telling you to watch the Philosophy Tube video. Oh, Christ, not the Philosophy Tube video again. Look, it's okay. I'll walk you through it. So,
here comes the
there's
violinist.
This pro-life radio host who gets kidnapped.
Oh,
he wakes
no.
up on the floor wired to a violinist who has kidney failure, and if he disconnects himself, the violinist will die. So they can't do a transplant? Well, there's going to be one, but it doesn't happen. Never mind that. Basically, in this hypothetical, he could be there until the violinist dies of old age. The point is, do you think he has a right to disconnect himself? Yeah. Wait, really? Yeah, but... Well, so you agree. By disconnecting, he is physically taking a life in exchange for his bodily autonomy. You just admitted that. Sometimes bodily autonomy trumps the right to life.
Yeah, but there's like a huge rift between some very random niche scenario of having someone attached to your body and their life dependent on being attached to you and a fetus. People just get lost in this line of arguments. At least, especially if you're talking, I don't know, to a normie, I guess. The more that I think about it, the more that I feel like it's not feasible to use this line of arguments. So, yeah, unless you're like debating with someone who's studying philosophy, I guess.
But, ooh. Did the radio host choose to be kidnapped?
I'll replace my YouTube membership with someone.
So is this
for YouTube Premium?
You're really going into that? Did the radio host choose to be kidnapped? Well, no, but like
there you go. And then they would say, well, is it an accident though? Because like if you compare that to sex, it's more intentional. There's more intentionality. Although, of course, then you can get into the argument, what if it's the R word, or if it's an SA, and sometimes say like even if you don't intend to, accidents happen. Okay, I wonder where he's gonna go.
Come on, like not all women choose to get pregnant either. Not just with rape cases, but like contraception isn't 100% effective.
Yeah,
either. Wait. Okay, before we do that, none of that matters because you would still be pro-choice even if no one took any precautions, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's why you shouldn't go to the R case or SA case, because then you're ceding ground in a way.
Yeah, sure. Good. So the problem is this philosophy tube video is, what's that word you communists always use? It's disanalogous. First of all, with respect to all the ladies out there, 9 months of pregnancy and childbirth is not the same as being indefinitely wired to a comatose patient on the floor. I know, canceled for misogyny, but also, brother, you can choose not to have sex. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. There it is. Like, yeah. Okay. Amen, brother. Just choose not to have sex. Five head. Like, I'm sorry. Is that an argument? Look, I don't want to be mean. Okay. I love women. I have a wife and 3 beautiful daughters after all. Okay. Let's do it this way. Now, I know you're not a parent, but that's okay. Let's say you're not the best driver. You're out in your car at night, you make a mistake, and you crash. You're fine, but your 3-year-old child in the passenger seat is dead. Well, that's a bit grim, but sure. Yeah. But let's say an angel comes down. The angel's name is Shen Babiro, and he says, let's just say, hypothetically, I can save your kid. But here's the catch. If I do save this kid, I need...
What is it? Shen Babiro?
Shen Babiro.
Shen.
And he says, let's just say, hypothetically, I can save your kid. But here's the catch. If I do save this kid, I need to cast a spell that makes you experience 9 months of pregnancy and then childbirth. Now, my liberal friend, here is the $1 million question. Are you going to save your child, or are you going to choose your bodily autonomy? Well, yeah, I'll save my child, of course, but like you realize that doesn't work here, right?
Yeah, that is disanalogous, because in this case, you already have the kid. You're attached to it in some respects. And besides, like, absent the... Because, like, if say it's not even your kid, then you should be allowed to say that you don't want to. Because, like, in order for it to be analogous, then you should not have any prior attachment to the kid.
Because I've chosen to raise that child. Okay,
yeah, there you
go. Don't get triggered. Let's say it's not your child. Let's say it's your friend's child. Mm-hmm. My child. Let's say it's one of my
fuck you, dude, if it's your
3
child.
beautiful daughters. Let's say it was some random kid in the street. Is there ever a time where you would let a child die for your mistake? Okay. No, but I mean, well, no, I don't know.
Fuck, the Chad move would be to say no.
Like, have you heard how bad some pregnancies can be? Like, that isn't even to mention all the ones that can kill you. Not only that, but did you know a woman is significantly more likely to get murdered when she's pregnant? Like, you have to factor all of that in. Like, maybe you should still have the choice in that situation. Like,
It's not maybe. You must have that decision. You're ceding ground by saying, what was it?
did you know a woman is
Blah,
significantly...
blah.
Maybe you should still have
If you say maybe, then it weakens your
the
stance.
choice in that situation. Like, I don't know. Yeah, that's a hard question, isn't it? Well, but it wouldn't be a hard question if we were talking about a fetus. Would it? Well, no shit. But you said your argument would work if fetuses were people. Now, why are you treating a fetus different from a 3-year-old? It's like you don't really think the fetus is a person. I'm sorry, brother.
Because we don't. Whenever we grant you that, okay, fine, let's consider the fetus a person, and go through the whole violentness argument, it's try to appeal to you. But deep down, no, we don't. It's like we're trying to meet you where you're at. If you're considering that a fetus is a person, that means let's create a hypothetical where it is also an adult. If anything, this shows that, hey, why is it if it's an adult, then it's okay if you disentangle yourself, you sever the attachment to that adult person, but it's not okay if it is with a fetus. That will be my rebuttal, I guess.
But your argument fails.
Oh, don't stop there. Oh, no.
Liberal destroyed. Trump 2024. Fuck Biden.
But yeah, I can get that in a real situation, it just gets too convoluted that it just gets tiresome.
So this is the best steel man I can give of both sides, and I honestly don't know what the counter is here. If you do, leave a comment. But from here, it always feels like the bodily autonomy argument is implicitly standing on the idea that a fetus is something different from a person. And although I do think Abigail had a lot of other good points in this video, I don't think this violinist comparison really works. The whole premise of her argument is that bodily autonomy can override a fetus's life, even if that fetus is seen as a person.
So during tonight's operation, I'm going to assume that the pro-life people are correct when they say that a fetus is morally fully equivalent to a grown human being. And I hope if you believe that, you'll stick around and watch the whole thing.
Now, obviously there is a level of threat and suffering where we do think it's okay to kill people, say in war or self-defense. So when she switches 9 months of pregnancy and childbirth for spending the rest of your life on a hard floor wired to a human vegetable and completely ignoring the choice factor, it looks like she's trying to force the level of suffering to a point where we're not really talking about pregnancy and abortion at all. But I did say I was pro-choice, so let's try another approach.
Hang on, let's repeat that
Force
again.
the level of suffering, completely ignoring the choice factor. It looks like she's trying to force the level of suffering to a point where we're not really talking about pregnancy and abortion at all. But I did say I was pro-choice, so let's try another approach. Part 2. When does life begin? So just to avoid any confusion, I'm not going to make any distinction between life and personhood here.
Okay.
I'm just going to use the two words synonymously, so as soon as we decide that something is a life, that's when it deserves protection. First, we have life begins at conception. And there are lots of reasons people believe this, but one of them really is just that it's simple. While sperm and eggs are technically alive, they are distinctly different from what we would call a human life. When fertilization happens, that is technically when you become you, a newly formed, genetically unique organism. In other words, a human
Ad
being.
incoming.
Or single-cell embryonic human zygote, to be exact. And we know today that your genes are effectively switched on pretty much within the first 2 to 3 days of fertilization. So if your unique human development starts at conception, it seems logical to say life begins at conception. And there are a few arguments you can make against that. Let's start with the bad ones. 1. It's not a life.
There you go.
It's a cluster of cells. I'm sorry, I think you'll find you are a cluster of cells, Alan. Your mum is a cluster of cells. What are we all, if not clusters of cells? Are we just going to look through?
Okay, alright. You got me, LonerBox. I did say that. I did say that just now, earlier in the video.
The human development cycle and arbitrarily decide how many cells you need to be a person? No. 2. It's not a human life because it's not a moral agent.
What does that
Is
even
a
mean?
1-year-old a moral agent?
Yeah.
No. If you've met one, you know. 3. It's physically tied to its host. Well, it's also tied to the host for a good while after the point of viability. Is a newborn child fair game so long as it's still attached by the umbilical cord? No. 4. It looks like a dolphin fetus.
Oh, no.
Have you not seen the Charlie Kirk debate?
Do you truly, in your heart of
This one is
hearts,
really funny, honestly.
truly believe that this is a human being? This,
Without a doubt.
without a doubt,
Yes.
this is a dolphin fetus.
Okay, so
Oh, but that was a bit funny. Because, holy shit, man. Why would you consider that as a human fetus? That doesn't look like a human fetus. At least not one that you would, like if you're Googling it, that would not how they would look like, right? Yeah, it's pretty much like that. This is the usual picture. There you go. Like so. Definitely not like that. At least the stereotypical ones.
Yes.
This is a dolphin fetus.
really think I could use it as a rationale. Are we saying a child needs to look a certain way before we grant it protection?
Yeah, I know, dolphin. And yeah, exactly. And
Rationale. Are we saying a child needs to look a certain way before we grant it protection?
there you go. And the argument becomes this, that, okay, let's say if you're unfortunately genetically, what would be the term? Not deform, right? Is it deform? I guess it is. Then does that mean that you shouldn't be granted protection? Then it becomes eugenics. So maybe don't go there. Unless for some funny dunks.
And if they were ugly or ambiguous enough, it would be okay to kill them? Well, as long as no one tells the elephant man. Honestly, the thing with life begins at conception is that it actually is one of the easier positions to defend. Conception is the beginning of your journey as a unique human organism, and putting that starting point somewhere else can be a bit awkward, but not impossible. Here's a better question. Why do we struggle to agree on where life begins when it's so easy to agree on where life ends? If gene expression really is the starting point and essence of human life, why do we find it so easy to pronounce people dead before their gene expression has ended? Because, yes, gene expression does not immediately end when you die. Some genes even become more active when you die. On top of that, your cells can still grow. Your hair and fingernails don't continue growing. That one's a myth.
Oh, okay.
But what you can
scary.
do, even after death, is give birth. A phenomenon that goes by the charming name.
Oh, God, that's insane. Rare case of coffin birth. Are you kidding me? The pregnant woman's remains may also suggest that she underwent cranial surgery due to a life-threatening complication. Okay.
A phenomenon that goes by the charming name of coffin birth. So if
I need to look that up. That's postmortem fetal extrusion is the expulsion of a non-viable fetus through the vaginal opening of the decomposing body of a deceased pregnant woman due to increasing pressure from intra-abdominal gases is non-viable. This kind of postmortem delivery occurs very rarely during the decomposition of a body. Okay, is there a particular reason why it needs to be taken out? I mean, they're both dead. Abdominal cavity generate gases, which causes the body to swell, can squeeze the uterus, even forcing it downward, and it may turn inside out. Oh. Okay, it'd be forced out of the body through the vaginal opening. If a fetus is contained within the uterus, it could therefore be expelled from the mother's body through the vaginal opening when the uterus turns inside out. Oh, so there's no human intervention here. It just happens naturally. The main differences lie in the state of the mother and fetus. They're both dead. And the mechanism of delivery. Okay, I think we've read enough. Let's continue.
a phenomenon that goes by the charming name of coffin birth. So if
Jeez.
gene expression can continue after death, what is death? Well, apparently scientists don't agree on this one either, but they generally give two answers. One is when the heart stops, but you could also argue that not every stopped heart counts as a death. Doctors will often try to bring a stopped heart back with a defibrillator, and sometimes during surgery they'll even push someone's ribs apart and try to massage the heart back to life with their hands. The second answer they'll give is brain death, and this one is a lot more final. When the brain dies, it can't come back, and the patient is legally dead. Now, I don't want to get too far into the science here, so I can just simplify and ask, if a brain-dead patient could have the rest of their body kept alive by machines, would they still be alive? My answer would be no, and when something similar to that happens in real life, it looks like doctors agree. Why is that the case? Well, I would say it's because the thing we're tying to the brain is human consciousness. So when we talk about protecting human
I guess this is where we get into sentience.
life, we're not really talking about protecting DNA or cells or genes. We're talking about sentience. That's the
There you
thing
go.
that makes us alive. Or I was thinking if this was a philosophy tube video, this is where I would throw in the Descartes reference and say, I think, therefore I am, and I'd maybe say it in Latin first, but I can't pull that off. And when it comes to abortion, it turns out that humans first start to gain some level of sentience at around 18 to 25 weeks, which is
Okay.
roughly the same time we consider to be the point of viability outside of the womb, and well past the time of elective abortions in most of Europe.
18 to 25 weeks. That's like divided by 4, 24 or 4, 6 months or 4 months. The first trimester, how long is the first? 0 to 13 weeks. So yeah, well beyond when you would normally get an abortion, right? Before 12 weeks. Cool.
Out of the womb, and well past the time of elective abortions in most of Europe.
What is elective abortion? The term elective abortion or voluntary abortion describes the interruption of pregnancy before viability at the request of the woman, but not for medical reasons. Okay. Elective, also they elect to do so? Why does it have to be elective? Or voluntary abortion, okay. Most abortions done today are elective, and thus it is one of the most frequently performed medical procedures, okay. Oh, but so this article is trying to argue why we should not be using that term. Okay. Maybe we can read that later on.
Now, some of you might jump in here and say, well, what about people in comas? Or someone who's just been knocked out cold? Or someone who's sleeping? Can we kill them because they don't have consciousness? To which I
But
would
they are
say
conscious,
we
though.
do protect those people, but it's on the basis that we expect them to regain consciousness in the future. Ah, but couldn't you apply that same argument to fetuses? Should we not protect them because they might gain consciousness in the future? But that, I would argue, is comparing apples to oranges. In the case of a coma, their conscious experience has already established itself. The thing we're protecting already exists, and that isn't the case for the fetus.
Yeah, I think I heard this line of arguments when I was watching Destiny's debate with someone from TikTok, if I'm not mistaken. And one of the line of argument is that the person values the potentiality of consciousness. I forgot how the debate went. I think it was more like Destiny was questioning. Okay, if you don't care whether or not the fetus is conscious yet, and you think that they should be protected, how about dead people? They're not conscious anymore. Should we also protect them? And then the person responds to that by saying, but then the person is dead. There's no more consciousness. There's no more potential consciousness in the future. Whereas a fetus, it could in the future if it, goes through a successful birthing process.
And we don't typically protect things that have never existed yet. A seed is not a plant, etc. So going with consciousness, we now have a measure for life beginning and ending in the same way. And that's just nicer, isn't it? The one last objection you might have is, well, isn't that just kind of arbitrary? And yes,
Yeah,
it is
it is.
arbitrary. It's just as arbitrary as any other point you could use. The reason I would say this one is preferable over all the other ones is that in practice, it works. Almost all abortions will happen before this point, and for the ones that happen afterwards, well, that's when we're getting into the area of health emergencies, and in that case, you're kind of forced to choose one life over the other anyway. In practical terms, a society that believes life begins at consciousness can function in a morally consistent way. Whereas if you want the world to act as if life begins at conception, that can take you to some very strange places. Part 3.
Okay. Let's go back a bit.
And when it comes to abortion, it turns out that humans first start to gain some level of sentience at around 18 to 25 weeks.
It is concluded that the basic neuronal substrate, pretty much butchered that word, I think. Neuronal? It's like urinal. Required to transmit somatosensory information develops by mid-gestation. However, the functional capacity of the neural circuitry is limited by the immaturity of the system. Thus, 18 to 25 weeks is considered the earliest stage at which the lower boundary of sentience could be placed. At this stage of development, however, there is little evidence for central processing of somatosensory information. Okay, let's go back a bit.
Therefore, a brain-dead patient could have the rest of their body kept alive by machines.
Are they alive?
Would they still be alive? My answer would be no, and when something similar to that...
Okay, let's see. Life after brain death. The body of a brain-dead person is usually not supported for very long. Doctors sometimes provide support in the form of a ventilator, hormones, fluids, etc. for several days if the organs will be used for donation or if the family needs more time to say goodbye. Damn, that's bleak. So technically there's no more brain activities, but they kept them quote-unquote functioning. Like in terms of other bodily activities. Shit, that's dark. Okay, if all of the criteria for brain death are met, then it's pretty clear that there's nothing left and we're supporting the body. Okay, let's go back a bit again.
Is a lot more final. When the brain dies, it can't come back and the patient is legally dead. Now, I don't want to get too far into the science here, so I can just simplify and ask, if a brain-dead patient could have the rest of their body kept alive by machines...
If you're in a comatose state, does your brain still function? They should, right? Someone who is in a coma, zoom in. Someone who's in a coma is unconscious and has minimal brain activity. So there's still brain activity. You're not brain dead. They're alive but can't be woken up and show no signs of awareness. The person's eyes will be closed and they'll appear to be unresponsive to their environment. Okay. I mean, it's NHS, pretty legit source, I imagine. Okay, so essentially we link it to brain activities, and based on according to this article, is that our first brain activities can be found within 18 to 25 weeks. So I guess if we look up, let's say, usually as 5 to 6 weeks after gestation. I see. So that's like a month and a half, right? So when someone brings up during the first trimester, the fetus will already have a heartbeat, then you can link it to a brain dead person, which is not exactly elegant, but at least it's better than saying, oh, the fetus is just a cluster of cell. I guess. That's what it comes down to, right? You're going to say that, if it is a brain dead person and you can still support it through life support, ventilators and whatnot, but would that person be alive? They're not. So in the case of a fetus, then if it's only a heartbeat, then logically, if you want to be consistent, they're not alive. But then they will say something like, how about the potentiality of consciousness?
To regain consciousness in the future. But couldn't you apply that same argument to fetuses?
The exact moment that I want the video to be.
Should
okay.
we not protect them because they might gain consciousness in the future? But that, I would argue, is comparing apples to oranges. In the case of a coma, their conscious experience has already established itself. The thing we're protecting already exists, and that isn't the case for the fetus. And we don't typically protect things that have never existed yet.
Yeah, but then I think they could still defend by saying they could still use the same argument about potentially reaching or achieving consciousness. It's not regaining consciousness as someone who's in a comatose state, but yeah, it's not exactly foolproof then.
Perception, that can take you to some very strange places.
Okay, what's the final
In
point?
practical terms, a society that believes life begins at consciousness can function in a morally consistent way. Whereas if you want the world to act as if life begins at conception, that can take you to some very strange places.
Well, LonerBox, unfortunately, most people don't care if they're morally consistent. They cherry pick whenever they see fit.
Part 3, a feast of bullets. So if we're talking about positions we could actually practice in real life, let's see what might happen if you truly believe life begins at conception. First, you would immediately have to rule out contraception pills because their function is not just to stop eggs from fertilizing. They can also thin the lining of the uterus and stop fertilized eggs from implanting in the womb.
Wait, what? Others work by thinning the lining of your uterus, so if the egg and sperm connect, the embryo can't stick into the lining. Oh, wait, it's reversible, right? Thin uterine lining, which makes the lining of the uterus thinner and causes lighter bleeding episodes. Is it reversible? It can cause thinning of the end and may require considerable time for... Okay, let's read this real quickly. Include systemic side effects are vaginal bleeding, which are more pronounced with high-dose oral preparations. In addition, progestins... Wait. So you can experience vaginal bleeding from taking... Are we still talking about birth control here? Okay, I don't know what the fuck this is. Okay, I think we're looking at the wrong thing now. But it is still pretty concerning if a birth control pill can do that. And I would really like to know how long it would, go back to normal. Because that's pretty fucked. Like, I don't know what would happen internally. I think so far the indication is that it affects your period, like how severe it is. Because it's thinner, there's less bleeding happening? Question mark? God, I need to read up on contraceptive pills. Because I do want to know. It's a bit unfair that there is more expectation for the women to take it. Because like all contraceptive pills are designed for women. I don't know if there are any pills for men that lowers the viability of the sperm. Is there? Okay, hang on. Contraceptive pills. Where are we doing this? Pills for men. Okay, what is this? Clinical trials. See, it's still clinical trials. Are safe and well tolerated. Further analysis of data. Okay. What do they do? What is the male pill? Again, from NHS. Surprised that they're always the first one that pop up. What is the male pill? That's it? Okay. Well, I mean, condom and vasectomy, yeah, sure. But then, come on, is there anything else? I mean, I know that vasectomy is reversible in some ways. This is still several years away. Damn, that's sad. All right, let's read this thing then. Show promise in early studies, and this came out in 2022. Okay. 2 oral male contraceptive candidates were effective in suppressing hormones needed for sperm production and received a favorable response from most users. Okay. Which hormone exactly? Androgens, but are also similar to progesterone. Androgens, what do they do? Sex hormones. Okay. In males? Male, okay, functions in sperm. The expression of the male phenotype. What is the production of... okay. Alright, so you lower the development of spermatozoa. Okay. Another sunlock, but here we are.
In other words, they can allow a life to be conceived and then take it away immediately afterwards. If you believe life begins at conception, then those pills should be at least as horrifying to you as the act of abortion itself. Probably even more so because lots of people take the pill, and you can imagine those things are slaying. If that's not enough, then allow me to introduce you to some of the worst extermination camps on Earth. Fertility clinics. In a fertility clinic, eggs and sperm are extracted from people who are struggling to have babies and then fertilized in a lab. The egg is then transferred to the mother's body, hopefully it implants, and she becomes pregnant. This method of conception outside the body is called in vitro fertilization, or IVF. The problem is, IVF doesn't always work, and so these clinics will always fertilize more eggs than they need. The ones that aren't used immediately are either placed into tubes and frozen, or are just thrown away. In the UK, this has been the fate of almost half of them. In other words, millions of human lives bred and slaughtered in broad daylight.
If you assume that life begins at conception, because technically, through IVF, it is not conceptualize, conceive, gestated, whatever the term is. But because it's not viable, they tend to die.
And this is where we get to
and it's really sad for, you know, the people who want to have children through IVF due to a variety of reasons that makes it more difficult for them to have kids. Yeah, it's a mentally grueling process, I imagine. And I don't know, hopefully people will continue to develop technology so that the process is more effective. Because, yeah, I think nothing makes you feel worse about yourself than knowing, because like from the get-go, you already feel like you're deficient that kind of develop a fetus, I guess. And the fact that even when you get a quote-unquote more, I'm inclined to not say better eggs or better sperm. That's very demeaning for them. But I can't think of another way of explaining it. But yeah, and knowing even when you do get those better eggs and still fail anyway, that's going to be very taxing for them. Anywho.
Imagine a whole bunch of weird scenarios. Suppose you're in a burning building with 2 exits. On the way out of one is a 1-year-old baby, and the other has a case with 1,000 IVF tubes. If you believe life begins at conception, you would have to save the tubes.
The 1,000,
and
yeah.
then probably explain to the screaming mother outside that at least her child was incinerated for a good cause. As you can imagine, a lot of pro-lifers are very reluctant to bite this bullet. Sometimes they might just say, okay, maybe life begins at implantation rather than conception.
Implantation? What the fuck? What does that even mean?
Which I think it's perfectly reasonable to ask, why? Is there any good reason to think an egg is less of a life before it implants?
Oh, when it implants in the uterus. Okay.
Or are you just moving the goalposts because treating fertilized eggs like people is completely unfeasible? But maybe there is a good reason for life beginning at implantation and I just haven't thought of it, so let's go with it. Because if we're saying life begins at implantation, then now I can introduce you to the next worst thing after fertility clinics, miscarriages. Now, miscarriages are not deliberate, so we can't really call them infanticide, but they are a pretty destructive act of nature, so more like a pandemic, perhaps? Really more like a plague. And if you believe a miscarriage is the death of a person, then there are a few more bullets you have to bite.
Is manslaughter at an insane amount.
First, you'd have to be willing to invest an obscene amount of money into research towards stopping miscarriages. If it came down to a choice between that and, I don't know, Trump's wall, you would have to choose the former. In the meantime, we definitely have to enforce some kind of lockdown, or in other words, ban sex until we can figure out what the hell is going on. If the cure for miscarriages came out in the form of some kind of vaccine, you would have to mandate it. Obviously. What are you, baby slayer. And if it turned out the best way to stop miscarriages was to reinforce the sperm of men, and the side effects of that treatment involved something like periodic bleeding with violent stomach cramps and mood swings for, say, 5 days out of every month, and at least once or twice in your life you have to push a lemon-sized object out of your dick hole, you would have to accept that.
Okay, wait, okay, there's a lot to process there. First of all, okay, hang on.
But
Okay.
now, miscarriages are not deliberate, so we can't really call them infanticide, but
That is manslaughter.
of active nature, so more like a pandemic, perhaps? Really more like a plague.
He's joking at this
And
point, okay?
if you believe a miscarriage is the death of a person, then there are a few more bullets you have to bite. First, you'd have to be willing to invest an obscene amount of money into research towards stopping miscarriages.
Which, to be fair, I think you should. Because that's, again, it's a traumatic experience.
If it came down to a choice between that and, I don't know, Trump's wall,
In this case, he's framing it as a joke against conservatives, specifically Republicans in the US. I'm sure if you ask him, should we put more research in preventing miscarriages, he would say yes. It's just a narrative device, as one might say.
to go. I know that's an absurd hypothetical, but
Thank you for admitting
it does
that.
show how far someone would have to go without breaking that initial principle. But you don't even really need an imaginary situation to show that. Some people, in fact, some countries, will make an exemption to allow abortions in cases of sexual
Okay.
assault.
Incest. Interesting tidbit to include.
Make an exemption to allow abortions in cases of sexual assault. But if we're being brutally honest, the question again would be, why? Maybe you could invoke bodily autonomy here because the victim didn't choose to get pregnant, but even here, the pro-life position is kind of unclear. Are they really going to say it's okay to punish a child for the sins of its father? If a child is conceived of rape and that's where their life begins, is there any meaningful difference between aborting them at 6 weeks and drowning them on their first birthday? Well, if you think the fetus is a person, then not really. If you really are pro-life, the only reason you would allow abortion in this case, but not for, say, a consenting adult, is because saying no to the 10-year-old makes you feel queasy. And this
Hang on. Okay, I lost that. I wasn't really paying attention just now because of the music. The music is really nice. I think you can tell that LonerBox has his own piano over there. And so far, all of his videos tend to have good music in the background. So,
the pro-life here because sexual assault.
okay.
But
See.
if we're being brutally honest, the question again would be, why? Maybe you could invoke bodily autonomy here because the victim didn't choose to get pregnant, but even here, the pro-life position is kind of unclear. Are they really going to say it's okay to punish a child for the sins of its father? If a child is conceived of rape and that's where their life begins, is there any meaningful difference between aborting them at 6 weeks and drowning them on their first birthday?
Right. Because then in this case, they're comparable. They're both person and they're both a product of the R word or SA. Therefore, yeah, by that logic, it should be okay to drown the 1-year-old kid, as bleak as that sound, which is exactly the point he's trying to make.
Well, if you think the fetus is a person, then
Yeah.
not really. If you really are pro-life, the only reason you would allow abortion in this case, but not for
National Right to Life official. 10-year-olds should have had baby? For the consequence of the Supreme Court's decision to, and how far some states are willing to go to prohibit abortion. National Right to Life official. The 10-year-old Ohio girl who crossed state lines to receive an God, no. Holy. Crossed the state lines to receive an abortion in Indiana should have carried her pregnancy to term and would be required to do so under a model law written for state legislators. That his law only provides exceptions if the person's life is in danger. It's a 10-year-old. She would have had the baby and as many women who have had babies as a result of the R word, we would hope that she would understand the reason and ultimately the benefit of having the child. Fucking hell, mate. Oh.
For, say, a consenting adult is because saying no to the 10-year-old makes you feel queasy. And this is where I think the pro-life position runs out of steam. And unless you think life begins at conception because God told you, in which case my God just whispered in my ear and he says you're full of shit, then you do have to deal with the idea that your marker is just as arbitrary as any of the other ones. Now, if you want that to be your personal marker, that's fine. But it does become a problem when you try to impose that morality on everyone else.
Okay, so I guess this is where the argument is going to come down to, is that you can't run a society under a pro-life framework. I guess this is where it's going. Because like, if you follow the pro-life framework to its fullest conclusion, then it could lead to such abhorrent outcomes, such as it's okay to drown a 1-year-old kid if they are a product of SA or R word. Or say like a 10-year-old who got pregnant should carry the baby to life. God, that's insane.
Because in practice, there is no pro-life position. It's a pro-birth position.
And I always love that LonerBox likes to use this music whenever he's about to reach the end of the video, when he's about to hammer the point.
The people who legislate against abortion don't care what happens to the child after they're born. They're often the least likely ones to step in for parents who can't afford a child, for the countless problems with adoption and foster care systems, for the emotional baggage of being an unwanted child. And they're not even really banning abortion. They're banning safe abortions. As for coat hangers, illegal procedures, potential increases.
That's insane. I can't imagine, like, why coat hangers? God, is there really no other alternatives? Is the whole thing about raw pineapples a myth? That you have to resort to coat hangers? God.
And pregnancy-related deaths, at least 3 women dying in Poland to pregnancy complications because of the chilling effects placed on doctors. That's all fair game for a law that isn't even guaranteed to reduce abortion that much. I mean, mate, it's the 21st century.
Yeah.
Come on. Lacrimosa di silla.
Nice music. Quite apropos, given the context as well. Let's enjoy the music.
Hi. So after this, I try to summarize the things that we've just learned from the video. The thing is, it ended up becoming very meandering because for the most part, I spent it rethreading the video to really capture the essence of the arguments. And sadly, I didn't even conclude things at the end. So I figured I might as well record a separate summary. I'm sorry, I'm still learning how to do Orea content properly. It doesn't help the fact that I really have a terrible memory, and it usually takes some time for me to really internalize new information. Anywho, what did we learn? I have a note right in front of me, so we'll just go through it point by point. First things first, don't say it's a cluster of cells. As tempting as it might be. It might come off as a dunk, but as LonerBox pointed out, it can easily be rebutted by saying, well, technically, we're all a cluster of cells. Aside from that, as I've hinted at the beginning, maybe stay away from the famous violinist hypothetical. Just don't. It gets into a lot of complexities, and not a lot of people respond well to hypotheticals. Usually people would just ask for more specifics, and after a while the hypothetical it would lose its steam and you just come off as a very confusing person. Instead, stick to consciousness. LonerBox brought up how we seem to struggle to determine when we are alive, but it's easy for us to agree when someone is dead. Even though, to be fair, people do tend to associate that the point where the heartbeat stops as the moment when someone dies. You know, the flat line in that heart rate monitor machine thingy, whatever it's called. Then again, I'm pretty sure if we say that we can keep the heartbeat going without any brain activities, so people that are under a coma doesn't count, and the potential of the person becoming conscious again is not existent, I'm pretty sure that most people would probably agree that, yeah, that person is dead. I am getting ahead of myself here, but before we get to the point about brain activities, we need to first introduce how there would still be cell activities after we are dead. This is done to argue against people saying that life begins at conception. If we don't acknowledge the cell activities that happen after we're buried, then we shouldn't apply the same standard for a fetus. Then we talk about how we determine someone is dead, linking to brain activities and whatnot. This means we are pushing back against people who argue that life begins at the first heartbeat, which we've established that we can keep the heart running without any brain activities or possibility of regaining consciousness, and we wouldn't consider that body to be alive. So say goodbye to that argument, I guess. Afterwards, we can funnel the conversation to consciousness, being sentient creatures, which I imagine to be LonerBox's ideal position in regards to the defining when does life begins. In that regard, it has been determined that a fetus begins to develop sentience once it reaches 18 or 25 weeks of development, which is well into the second trimester, which happens to be beyond the average time of pregnancy when someone decides to get an abortion. Usually it's during the first trimester. And by this point, the fetus has reached the point of viability outside of the womb. And besides, usually an abortion at this stage, at this rate, is only done when carrying the fetus to term endangers the life of both the fetus and the mother. Where, well, I hope it's not too controversial if someone decides to preserve their own life. That's pretty much it, really. Yeah, nice and simple, right? Thank you, LonerBox, for the video. It's really good. Although, well, understandably, it being a video essay, the line of arguments, the dialogue tree is limited to the writer's imagination. And I know that abortion debates could go to various directions, and so I might consider watching those, maybe on stream, maybe while playing a game, I guess. But nevertheless, I think this is a pretty strong foundation to have moving forward. Now, I understand that abortion is a really sensitive subject, and to this day, it is still criminalized in Indonesia. And as we've established from the video, and as you probably know, I guess, criminalizing abortion does not stop someone from getting an abortion. Hence the coat hangers, which I still find to be very grim. There are definitely people who are pushing for legalized abortions, and we know for a fact that there are abortion clinics, working in the shadows, I guess. Those who sell abortion pills, Plan Bs, and whatnot. This is good, but definitely far from ideal. And having a strong foundation in arguing for the rights to abortion, especially through the lenses of people who are pro-life, i.e., determining when does life begins, is crucial in securing them. I don't know about you, but you can scream "my body, my choice" as much as you want till you're all frothing in the mouth, but while it is enough for me, but it is not enough for them. It is not enough to destigmatize the idea of, at least through their perspective, to destigmatize the idea of terminating a fetus that could potentially become a living being. Okay, I hope that is a serviceable React content. I'll see if I can make this more of a regular thing. That is all for me for now. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, leave a comment down below, and ring the notification bell icon so that every time I upload a video, it goes right to your feed. Links to my socials in the end card and in the description down below. You can find the link to LonerBox's video as well in the description. That is all for me for now. I'll see you guys in the next one, okay? Bye-bye.